After last week's brain fart, I wasn't hoping for a great Victory Road go-home show necessarily, as much as a simple creative rebound. I didn't know if it was going to be better than last week, but it would have been pretty hard for it to be any worse. It started out with a James Storm segment. Yeah, this was a better show than last week. Storm cuts a promo on his match with Bobby Roode at Lockdown, which might have been more appropriate if he'd saved it for next week. Then Bully Ray comes out and says Storm isn't going to make it to Lockdown, tells Storm he has a match with Gunner tonight, and then Storm and Gunner start fighting. James Storm wasn't at his best in this segment. Normally his promos are first rate, but he seemed a little bit off here for some reason. He kept pausing like he was trying to remember his lines. I'm not sure what was going on, but he seemed distracted somehow. But the segment picked up when Bully Ray came out, and he did a good job of setting up the Storm-Gunner match. Weaker mic work than usual from Storm here, but Bully Ray can sell pretty much anything, so the segment itself was okay. Following a backstage segment with Sting, Gail Kim and Madison Rayne got put in separate singles matches. And this felt like a bad idea to me. Number one, because it devoted more time to this storyline than was strictly necessary, and number two, because it meant they were about to subject us to a Madison Rayne versus Velvet Sky match. Why Velvet Sky? You could have picked any other knockout for this and it would have turned out better. Anyone who remembers their match from No Surrender 2010 could have told you why this was a bad idea. The match was every bit as boring as you'd expect. Thankfully, it was pretty short. Also, Velvet lost, so it had that going for it. Granted, that means Madison had to win, which wasn't sweetening the deal, but at least that made sense from a booking perspective. This match was pointless, and it took up time that should have been allocated to more important things on this show. You did not need two separate matches to hype up Gail versus Madison. I can't imagine many people are even looking forward to that, and no one thinks Madison is going to win the title. They did Gail versus Mickey a little later, and that hyped the pay-per-view match perfectly fine, but this match was not needed. It was very superfluous, and also because it was a really boring match. So Gail versus Mickey happened later in the night, and this match was much, much better, because it was two women who were infinitely more talented. I appreciated that the writers were smart enough to make this match the longer of the two. The finish may have been predictable, but the match was strong. The only real drawback here was that I guarantee you this match was better than anything Madison Rayne is going to deliver on Sunday. So this was an effective segment that hyped the Victory Road match well enough. Having this match was the reason why they didn't need to do Velvet vs. Madison, and in fact why that match should have been cut from the show. They went to a backstage segment with Crimson and Matt Morgan. They were hashing out how Crimson stole the pin from Morgan last week, and Crimson talking about how you only get paid if you win, and winning's all that matters, and his record speaks for itself. We're really starting to see Crimson's heelish side come out now, and once they pull the trigger on this officially, I think his character is really going to take off. I can understand why some people didn't like Crimson as a face. He didn't seem to have a lot to his character other than being just the generic tough guy with the Goldberg-esque win streak that wasn't really over anymore. But give his character a little tweak, turn him into sort of a cocky dick who brags about his win streak, and now people have a reason to get interested in it again, if only because they want to see somebody beat him. Personally, I think Crimson is much better suited as a heel. He seems a lot more comfortable and natural with a character like this. I mean, he probably should have been a heel from day one. I think this is why some people weren't digging him last year. I mean, he looks, talks, and acts like a heel, and now that we see this new persona coming out, it's more obvious how the babyface role was kind of an awkward fit with him. So then they do Crimson versus Samoa Joe. The action was alright, but it was really more about the storyline. Surprisingly, Matt Morgan interfered on behalf of Crimson here. And that was very strange, because we all assumed that Crimson was going to turn heel and feud with Morgan, but then they teased that Morgan might be turning heel as well. So maybe Crimson got into Morgan's head or something? Maybe they want to keep the tag team going for a while longer? I don't know. But I guess this means the Joe Daddies are officially babyfaces. Maybe the writers just decided to stop fighting it. But the weird thing is, Crimson is the most heelish person in this feud right now. He had Morgan outside the ring cheating for him, but he was getting face heat in this match. So, I guess they're in a transitional period with this feud now. I didn't dislike anything that happened here, but man, this was awkward. Then they had an Austin Aries segment. He brags about being the longest reigning X Division champion of all time, as well he should. I'm glad they didn't just forget about that. And he showed that music video of himself, that was a cool touch. So then Zima Ion comes out. They go back and forth on the mic. Ion says that what happened to Jesse Sorensen could easily happen to Aries, and wine gets thrown in each guy's face. It was a really nice talking segment to hype the X Division title match this Sunday, and we don't normally see a lot of talking segments to hype X Division feuds, so it's always a nice breath of fresh air when that happens. Both guys were really good here. I think what they're doing with Ion right now is great, although he does need to take control of his eyebrows before those things just shoot right off his head. I like this segment a lot, but again, who the hell are we supposed to cheer for? You've got Aries, who is note perfect playing this arrogant douchebag character, and then there's Ion, who's playing this pretty boy asshole and bragging about breaking a guy's neck. The only thing that might be swaying people over to Aries' side is that he's more likely to turn into a badass if you piss him off. And the Jesse Sorensen thing makes Ion the more heelish of the two in this feud by default. Not that Aries is turning into a white knight or anything, but he was getting cheered by the end of this segment. So I like the angle they're doing. I'm just not sure what the writers are going for here, because heel versus heel is always tricky. At this point, I do expect Ion will be the next X Division champion, and if it can't be Alex Shelley, then that's almost certainly the right call. I'm not sure when it'll happen. Victory Road feels a little too soon. Lockdown would be more appropriate. Not sure what they do with Aries after that, though. I mean, he might be in line to be elevated once his title reign is over. What I think might happen is that Ion wins the X Division title from Aries, and then later that night, when Robbie E is doing his little bullshit open challenge, Aries comes out and wins the TV title. I don't know when or if it'll happen, but that would be my guess. Then they did Ken Anderson versus Christopher Daniels. The match was good. I wish they had made a bigger deal out of Anderson getting back in the ring after several months, but whatever. Something I liked about this was that they tried to give some kind of explanation for Kaz's behavior recently. You know, Tenay theorized that Kaz kind of went Stockholm. Like before he was with Daniels reluctantly and didn't want any part of this, but now he's starting to drink the Kool-Aid. And I appreciate that they're trying to shine some light on that, but they still haven't explained what Daniels was holding over Kaz's head that got him to turn against AJ in the first place. That was a major factor in this angle. Daniels knew something that Kaz didn't want anyone else to know, and that part seems like it's getting ignored now. They need to reveal that at some point, otherwise this feud is going to feel like they didn't think it through well enough. Then they did Kurt Angle versus Garrett Bischoff. Haha! In a 5-minute challenge. Basically a match with a 5-minute time limit. My feelings about Garrett have not changed. He's not ready for a huge push like this. I don't want to see him on my TV. They need to ship him off to OVW, but this was at least an improvement in the booking of him. You know, they got over the idea that Angle could have finished Garrett at any time he wanted and was just toying with him, and he completely had his way with Garrett until the last 30 seconds when Garrett got a hope spot. And yeah, Garrett made it through the 5 minutes, but only by the skin of his fucking teeth. There was no question in anyone's mind that Kurt really won that match. And I still don't like Garrett, but this was a less offensive way to use him than what they'd been doing, because they were finally taking into account who he is. Not the executive producer's son, not the future of wrestling, sorry Hogan, but a rookie who is as green as the day is long, has almost no experience, and isn't completely over his head. You put a guy like that in the ring with Kurt Angle, and he's going to get his ass whooped. Angle is going to completely shame this motherfucker on general principles. Now, he can still be gutsy and resilient. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, he's not going to come out looking like a stud in this situation. And to book him like that is just going to make people resent Garrett even more because it's so fucking ludicrous no one can take it seriously. And that's the mistake they've been making with him up until this point. You know, they kept trying to anoint Garrett as the next big thing, with no one buying it because everyone knew his push was bullshit, when what they really needed to do was make people sympathize with him. So this was better. I'll give it that much. But it had no place on the go-home show for a pay-per-view that Garrett isn't even booked on. You know, Angle attacks Garrett afterward, Jeff Hardy makes the save, and that, along with a really quick 20-second backstage promo from Hardy, is all the hype they had for Kurt Angle versus Jeff Hardy this Sunday. I don't even like Jeff Hardy, and I think that's idiotic.
You people are fools!
Why are you giving Garrett Bischoff a 5-minute match when you should be using that time to turn up the heat with Hardy and Angle, which is the Victory Road match with the least amount of hype despite having the most star power? I mean, they sort of tried to do this with Hardy making the save for Garrett, but that was just because of a supposed connection between those two that was barely established just last week instead of what this feud was supposed to be about. And this is another reason why they should have cut Velvet vs. Madison, because that was 3 minutes that could have been used to do something more with Angle and Hardy that didn't involve Garrett fucking Bischoff. Very ineffective build for Angle and Hardy, in my opinion.
This whole show is ridiculous!
Though they did at least do us the courtesy of not booking that as the main event. That was James Storm versus Gunner. Not really a whole lot to say about that. It was a decent match, kind of on the short side. James Storm won and they teased a little bit with Bully Ray afterward. No real complaints. And the final segment of the night was the Sting-Bobby Roode contract signing. Neither man got his entrance shown, which for a segment like this was a big facepalm moment. That's another reason why Velvet vs. Madison should have been cut. That was time this show just did not have to spare. They signed the contract, then Roode cuts a lengthy promo about how Sting is jealous of him, he's washed up, he should have retired a long time ago, and all this other stuff. Then Sting goes nuts, puts on the face paint, and kicks Roode's ass. Bobby Roode was very good here, his promo was excellent. I think the stuff he said needed to be said because there was a ring of truth to some of it, and that makes this feud all the more personal. But I wish they had finished this some other way. I hate to say it, but CM Punk has pretty much killed these segments forever. I mean, he completely exposed and deconstructed the whole contract signing concept with that one he had with Cena last year. And he basically spelled out that these things are just a formality. They always end the same way. They're nothing more than an excuse to get two guys in the ring face to face so they can sign a piece of paper and then end with beating each other senseless. Now it's out there. You can't take that back. So if you want to do a contract signing now, you have to either find a new and different way to execute it, or at least do it with a sense of irony and self-awareness. And unfortunately, there was none of that here. So while this certainly wasn't a bad segment by any means, it did end up feeling a little bit antiquated. Not enough to hurt the segment, but enough so that I noticed and was left wanting something that I didn't get here. Better than last week? Absolutely. A good go-home show? Yes and no. They managed to hype every match on the card, some more effectively than others, but some of the things they allocated time to seemed pretty unwise. The Knockouts title match getting 2 segments of hype, whereas Kurt Angle Jeff Hardy got almost none, plus the Garrett Bischoff thing, which, I mean, if they had to do it, really should have been done next week. But the build-up for most of the other feuds was pretty strong for the most part. Eric Young and ODB were restricted to one brief backstage pre-tape, thank God. And I think they managed to partially avoid falling into that old trap they always fall into this time of year, throwing the March pay-per-view under the bus so they could focus more on Lockdown. Yeah, Lockdown is clearly the priority, but they did better than they usually do here, so at least Victory Road feels like it can stand on its own, at least somewhat, and isn't just being dismissed as a Lockdown pre-show and nothing else. But remember, I said partially, and that's largely because of the main event. I never agreed with them doing this. There needed to be something on the line here that impacted Lockdown, but there isn't. It's Sting versus Bobby Roode in a match where there's nothing at stake and therefore no real incentive for anyone to watch. Who wins and loses this match really doesn't matter because there's no consequence either way. And that was the real failure of the Victory Road hype. They just never came up with a compelling hook for the main event. And TNA, just in case you don't already know this, I'm going to tell you. The only outcome of that match that is acceptable is a dominating and decisive pinfall or submission victory for Bobby Roode. You need to make him look like a sadistic beast to get people hyped up to see James Storm kick his ass next month. Unfortunately, I don't think that's what we're going to get. Why? Because it's no holds barred. That's obviously just a way to cover for Sting. I expect there's going to be a lot of brawling through the crowd. Bobby Roode will probably take most of the bumps. I do think Roode will win the match, but I'm not optimistic that it's going to be the dominant, no-bullshit victory that he needs. Maybe I'm wrong. I sure hope I am, but I don't know. We'll find out this Sunday. Until next week, peace out.